The bright side of addiction is recovery. In this edition of Recovery Coast to Coast, we respond to a number of recent emails where listeners asked if we ever feature stories of families that faced and lived through the destruction caused by alcohol and other drugs. Well, in this edition, we're going to go into the audio archives and present a conversation that we had with an amazingly strong, brave, and courageous woman. Her name's Penny Legate. Now, if you lived in Seattle a few years ago, you may remember Penny as a television news anchor on Cairo TV Channel 7. She also hosted Seattle Evening Magazine. Her beautiful 19-year-old daughter, Myra, died from a drug overdose in 2012. It's a parent's worst nightmare, to be sure. But be forewarned that this podcast is raw, powerful, and very emotional. It's reality that those suffering from addiction often die, and the residual damage suffered by family members and friends who are left with shattered lives and menacing memories that never go away. Penny honors her daughter's memory these days in a very enlightening way. She is open about her story about Myra's death and about her desire to help prevent this from happening to other parents. We will also close out the podcast with some inspirational thoughts from actress Julie Harris. I'm Neil Scott, host of Recovery Coast to Coast. Our website is recoverycoasttocoast.org. That's recoverycoasttocoast.org, all one word. Following 15 years of nightly broadcasting here in Seattle on iHeartRadio, we've now upgraded to a national podcast available to anyone at any time, featuring interviews with everyday people in recovery, as well as clinicians, authors, recovering celebrities, and newsmakers who offer the promise of hope and the reality of recovery, plus well-vetted resources for individuals, families, and friends. We invite you to enjoy the podcast and to share it with your friends as well. Very important. Recovery is an American way of life. And a reminder, our email address, if you want to reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you, is recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. Recovery Coast to Coast is supported by Sundown M Ranch, one of the oldest and most successful treatment programs in America. They have successfully treated well over 200,000 adults, adolescents, and family members for the past 50-plus years. It's where recovery becomes a reality. They just celebrated their 54th anniversary on the 4th of March. Their staff is compassionate and empathetic. In fact, many of their top-notch staff are graduates of Sundown. They understand where you are, realizing that going into treatment or sending someone to treatment is very emotional. And they can help you understand and navigate through the admission process, including working with insurance companies so you won't have to. Not all treatment centers do this, by the way. And Sundown does this with the utmost respect and confidentiality. In many cases, they can arrange for same-day admission. Their exceedingly high level of care is abstinence-based, 12-step centered. They provide a lot of services: detox, education, individual therapy, group therapy, a comprehensive family program, and a lot more, including recovery enhancement. Their philosophy of treatment has three main objectives: arrest the disease, provide needed support in the recovery process, and guide the individual back to a healthy and productive life. They're licensed, accredited, and certified, and they are members of the National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers. Very important. They adhere to a strict code of ethics. If you're considering a treatment program, do your research, certainly, but please check out Sundown M Ranch. Their website is sundown.org. They are a not-for-profit organization. The road to recovery begins at Sundown M Ranch. I received an email from a listener in New York State, and she writes, "We love your podcast and the guests that you have on. The stories are amazing and inspirational. They're proof positive that people can and do recover. And with recovery as a lifestyle, anything is possible. I especially like your take on relapse, or as you call it, not relapse, but recovery enhancement. I'm wondering if there are stories from parents who struggle with their addicted children. The courage it takes to stay strong and let go with love and do everything possible to help their children. Now, a friend of mine recently lost her son to an overdose, and not everyone makes it. I understand that. And those that do become miracles. I would love to hear a parent who has traveled that path. Sincerely, Lucy. Well, first of all, Lucy, thank you very much for the email. And I remind listeners that we welcome your emails at recoverycoasttocoast at comcast.net. A few years ago, when Recovery Coast to Coast aired nightly on iHeartRadio in Seattle, we had a guest who shared her pain, her heartache, and her courage. Her daughter lost her battle with addiction, but her memory remains very much alive in the hope of preventing others from unimaginable pain and sorrow. Now, my co-host for this archived conversation was author Mike Hickey. Here now is that interview. If you are a first-time listener, an extra special welcome. If you have been here before, welcome back. Welcome back to Mike Hickey. He's joining me tonight as co-host. Mike is the author of Counterclockwise, a great new novel, and also a book of poetry called A Dress Walked By with a Woman Inside. Mike, good to have you here.
Thanks, Neil. It's good to be with you.
And tonight we're going to be talking again about the heroin epidemic. We've done a lot of programs recently about this because there's such an epidemic that most people don't even realize, and you need to stop and take a look around and see what's going on. Rolling Stone recently did a fantastic article called The New Face of Heroin, and it talks about heroin and the availability, not just in the large cities, but throughout the country and in many of the small cities as well, and how it all happens. Joining us tonight, and we're delighted to have her in the studio, is Penny Legate. She's the former Cairo TV anchor, and Cairo TV is the CBS affiliate here in Seattle, and she was also the host of Evening Magazine. Her daughter died very tragically from a heroin overdose, and Penny now wants to celebrate her life by talking about it and preventing it from happening again. Penny, good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much
nice
for having
to have
me.
you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's start by going back to the 12th of June of 2012. Mm-hmm. Tell me what happened.
Well, my daughter had moved in with me. She was 19 at the time, and she was struggling, but I still, as a parent, knowing that she'd been struggling with drug and chemical dependency for about 5 years, off and on. She started with, alcohol and pot and quickly escalated. She was very interested in knowing. She wanted to try things. I read her journal. And this despite many, many conversations by my husband and I to try to tell her that, this was not the way to go. We even had friends that she saw their lives kind of coming unraveled by drugs and alcohol. But anyway, to go back to that date, Neil, that morning I got up and went to an early morning yoga class, and I came back. I could hear her dog. She'd moved in with me about a month before because her boyfriend and she had broken up. And she, as I said, had been struggling. She'd lost a lot of weight. She had an eating disorder as well. The day before, she was in a great mood. She said, I'm going to start eating better. I'm going to get better. She was very happy. She was up and at 'em and talking about going to college. Her dog was whining. I had told her that if she was going to move back home with me, she had to take care of her own dog, because I already had 3 animals of my own. And the dog was whining, and I thought, Mara, I'm not going to go down and let your dog out for you. This is up to you. It was probably about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. And the dog kept whining and whining. I thought, all of a sudden I just felt so sorry for the animal needing to go out. I went downstairs, and she was in the doorway of the bathroom that was off of her bedroom, and I ran to her. She was lying on her side, and I saw a syringe in the sink, and of course I was completely freaked out. I just hoped that she had just passed out or something, and she was gone.
Now, she had been to treatment a number of times. She'd struggled with recovery, and she was in 3 months down in Arizona.
Yes, she was in treatment twice. The first time was in 2009, and so she would have been 16, almost 16.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an intervention treatment. I mean, we surrounded her with friends and family. We hired an interventionist
Mm-hmm.
to come and help us because we were at our wits' end. At that time, her drug of choice was cocaine. I could see she was going to die on us. She was just wasting away, and I know that people are probably listening, and I know I might have been one of these parents at one time that went, "How can you let it get that far? How's this allowed?" And I, as a parent, I would have asked the same questions. I would say I would never have a child that's got a drug problem. If they did, I'd lock them up or watch everything they do. And believe me, I tried a lot of that stuff. But yeah, so we had this really horrible intervention. It was the second worst day of my life. Was the day of her intervention, and because she freaked out on us. This was not a pleasant intervention. She called us every name in the book. She jumped up and tried to run out the door. We ran after her. We tackled her to the ground. Mm. She went into the bathroom then, ran into the bathroom and shut the door. And then she tried to smash her fist through the shower door, the glass shower door. She was screaming, yelling, calling us everything. We unlocked the bathroom door, came in. She's clawing, fighting, kicking, biting. I hate this image of her because it really isn't her. She's the most beautiful girl, but you can see what drugs do to kids. And wrestled her to the ground, holding her, and she says, "Please don't send me away." And she's begging it to me now. She says, "Mama, please don't send me away," because this was a child, despite her choices, was a child that liked to be home.
Yeah.
She liked to be home. She didn't like to have sleepovers. She wanted to be home a lot. And she said, "Please don't send me away. Please don't send me away." And I said, "Mara, I can't keep you safe anymore. I can't keep you safe. I can't protect you anymore." And I said, "We don't have any choice." And she's screaming, yelling, and then she's pleading and crying. And then, in the meantime, she's tried to kick and bite us and spit on us. And the interventionist came in and said, "Mara, are you going to accept, our offer to, our insistence that you go and get help?" And she said, "No." And then he said to us, "Call the police."
Whoa.
And we had talked about this as a possible outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Because if she fought us, we had the right to actually call the police to file an assault charge.
Right.
And so you got to make the choice. Do you let her run or do you send her to jail? So the police came, and I have to say, they were really, really wonderful. The Seattle Police Department, these two guys that came, just handled it better than I can imagine. They came in, they were the good cop, bad cop kind of thing. They had it all worked out, and they came into the bathroom where she was cowered in the corner. And they said, "Hey, Mara, she's got her head down between her knees and not looking up." They said, "Well, we understand there's a lot of people out here in the living room that love you. And they think you need to get help. And you need to look at us. You need to look at us. Make eye contact with us, Mara. We need to know that you're listening to us. And would you, look at us, and so we can ask you this question, because you are in control here. You're in control right now of this decision. You can either go with your dad today to treatment, because we'd bought tickets to fly her to Arizona, or you can go to jail." And they said, "The choice is yours." And she said, "I'll get help."
Mm. And she went down and spent 3 months down there in Arizona. And
I know we had to send her to Arizona. There's nothing of that.
It's a shame.
There's nothing here
Yeah.
for adolescents that's more than a 30-day program. We knew 30 days was not going to work for this particular problem. And even the 90-day program wasn't enough. But in our state, we have the consent age of 13. Our child can walk out of treatment.
Yeah.
And she would have run out of treatment because she was in denial of her problem at this point. So she flew off, and I guess when they picked her up in Phoenix, this Cottonwood de Tucson was the name of the facility, because we chose that because it was a 3-month program. It was specifically a program for adolescent girls, no boys around, and it was heavily monitored. Kids were monitored going to the bathroom. They were watched all the time. They had no chance to run, and they were also well cared for. The program had a great reputation. So, yeah, all the way when they picked her up, met my husband in Phoenix, and where he dropped her off, she screamed, I guess, all the way to an hour's drive. And when she checked in, she had muscle wasting. She had serious, health issues around her drug use, and so.
Penny Legate is joining us tonight, talking about the tragic loss of her daughter. My co-host is Mike Hickey. Mike?
I think it's incredibly brave that you're here telling your story. And I just feel privileged and honored to be in a room with you and talking about this very hard subject. When your daughter was 12, she was diagnosed ADHD on the spectrum, as they call it. My son is on that too. And I was wondering if you ever got a feeling for how ADHD was connected to her subsequent depression, which was connected to her subsequent addiction. Like, are they all connected?
I think they are. At least for her, they were. She was a bright, happy, social little girl, very energetic, very funny. She was a gymnast, a fast pitch player, up until puberty came on. And we hear that so many children start having issues. We all have issues at puberty, but this is often when children turn to drug use to start self-medicating for the pain of puberty. And Mara was an unusual child in that, and I had another daughter, so I went through it once with her and through puberty, which wasn't the easiest for her either. But with Mara, she was really dark and insightful, and she had huge perspective and intuition around people, kind of unlike anyone I've ever met before. I would say it almost borders on a clairvoyance.
You call her a highly evolved spirit in one interview.
Yes. And other people would say the same of her. All the problems of her own and others built collectively on her soul. She could never let go once somebody was hurting. It became part of her DNA. And as much as I tried to coach her about, compartmentalizing pain and in our lives that we kind of have to survive, that we can spend time with a friend in distress, but then we need to go home and work on schoolwork and then get to that person again. But you can't just keep carrying it with you and let it accumulate and hold you back and pin you down. But that's the kind of girl she was. She's, I can't, Mom, I can't. Once I have the knowledge, I just can't let it go. So so the ADHD issue, which I refused to believe about her, 'cause she's a great student, and then all of a sudden she just wasn't turning in her work, and she was in disarray. She was having, I think she was bullied a lot because she was beautiful, believe it or not. I just read a whole article about the kids who were trying to fit in, how the ones that are the top bully the ones who are trying to get into groups, even though they're cute and they're liked and everything else. That there's a lot of bullying going on with this particular group of kids. We kind of think of the kids who might be struggling with weight issues or may not be so socially adept, them being bullied. But no, there's like another group of kids, and I remember her telling me what the kids in the hallways would say to her. It's horrible. And so she struggled a lot with that. And so she had this ADHD, and then she started getting like this body dysmorphia issue and thinking that she was too fat. So then we had, trouble with getting her to eat, and even though she was an athlete. And so, I think I'm really blabbing on here a lot, Mike, about the answer to your question. But yes, I think the ADHD, the depression, the drug use, the eating disorder, all these things were heavily overlapping in her story. Very hard to break out.
And you talked about there being a genetic connection as well.
Yes, and her father had a lot of serious depression in his puberty. And that was hard for me to relate to, because I remember having all the usual angst. Oh, gosh, I'm not pretty enough. I've got pimples. Oh, geez, will I get a date to the prom? But I don't know. I just didn't have that same kind of anxiety going through puberty. I was just lucky. It's just my emotional makeup, I guess. But, he had really dark, almost suicidal times through his puberty. And I think maybe genetically that was something that she may have inherited from him. I don't know. It's hard for us to say.
Right, but it's easy to speculate. I think, in that
Right. She
area.
was raised in a happy house. I mean,
Right.
our home was happy, and she had lots of opportunity. She was well loved by a huge village of people. That's why it makes it all the more mysterious, when a child like this makes these decisions.
Physically, she was so beautiful. I've seen pictures of her. She's stunning. I mean, and so I think a lot of people think that kids in this situation who overdose or who die or have these profound addiction problems, that they come from troubled backgrounds and from abuse and neglect, and that's not always the case, and it certainly wasn't the case here.
No, and she would say that when she was in treatment the second time around here in the state of Washington, which she went voluntarily to. So it was a big change from from Lakeside Milam, which was her recent rehab experience, to Cottonwood several years earlier. She said we would sit during the parents' visitation time. She would say, Mom, all the kids here look at me and go, "What are you doing here? You're a cute girl. You got a lot going for you. You've got great parents. You've been able to do anything you want to do. You've traveled around the world with your family. You've taken ballet lessons. You're a great fast pitch player, blah, blah, blah." And she goes, "I can't answer them." She says, I don't know why. I don't know why.
How long did she stay sober when she got out of Cottonwood?
Not long. Not long. She was still in denial. And about her, she said, "I'm not a drug addict, I'm not an addict. I had a little problem there. I was experimenting, but I'm not an addict." And I would just look at her, and I would never agree. I would just look at her like, I would never agree with that, because I could see that she was. Although I wanted to believe she wasn't, I was pretty sure at that point she was. And so I would say it started to unravel slowly. I think she tried hard, and then it started to unravel with small things like I would read in her journal. I read her journal. I know it's a horrible violation. And when she found out, she was so mad at me. And I said, "I know, I don't want to read your journal. But I said, as a mother, I'm going to do everything I can to save your life." And she started in drinking a beer here and there and doing that kind of stuff. And then she slid in about 6 to 8 months.
How was the decision made to go to Lakeside?
2009, she was at Cottonwood. In 2010, she was discovered in a bathroom cooking heroin. Now, prior to that time, she acted fine. And this is the thing that's incredible about heroin addicts. They do not act stoned or stumbling, or you can't smell anything on them. And believe me, here's a mother who was like vigilant. I was reading texts. I was following her, taking her to school every day, picking her up, talking to teachers. I was sick to my stomach all the time worrying about this girl, my daughter. It was like a full-time job. We got a call from a dad whose daughter had seen Mara cooking heroin. We confronted her about it, and she admitted it. And we just sat very calmly and talked with her, and we said, "Well, we think that you need to go back to rehab, Mara." And she goes, I agree. She says, "I need help."
Did that surprise you?
Kinda. But, she'd matured a lot since the Cottonwood days, and she had started acting really secretive, though, and saying things like, but before this, let me just backtrack a little bit, you guys, I'm sorry, but just before this was discovered, she was saying to me, I could tell she was using something again. And I thought she was using Ritalin, because I'd found it in her purse. And she'd been caught shoplifting and some other things, so I knew that things were starting to unravel again. And she said to me, "Mom, I don't want you to come in my room. I don't want you to search my things. I don't want you to ever look at my purse." And I said, "Look, I know you're using." And I said, "I don't know what it is you're using." And I said, "But at this point, I can't manage your disease. I've tried, and I've failed. So the disease belongs to you. I love you unconditionally. Nothing you do, right or wrong, good or bad, changes that. But I can't manage your disease anymore." And she just looked at me. And I said, "When all your friends," I say that with quotes around it, "fall away, all these people you think are so important, I'll be the last one standing in your corner." And I said, "When you're ready to get help, let's talk." and I'll use any resources I have left to help you. And so I think that sent her to her bottom, because I think she felt like, whoo, Mom's off my case now. Party on. I said, I need you to be home by a certain time every day. I need you to get up and go to school. And then whatever you choose to do with your life is going to be your choice now. So that's when, like 6 weeks later, a month later, she was caught with cooking heroin. So that's when we called me, said, what are we going to do here? And she said, I want to go to rehab, and I want to go now. So she went into detox, and then she went straight to Lakeside Milam. And when we were checking her in, she looked at me, she said, Mom, I just want to thank you for sending me to Cottonwood. As horrible as I was and as awful as that was for me, and as much as I said I didn't want to go, she says, you saved my life sending me there.
Penny Legate joining us tonight on Recovery Coast to Coast, television personality in Seattle, but more than that, a very loving mom who lost her daughter to heroin. My co-host is Mike Hickey. Mike?
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about, Penny, is as your daughter was dealing with addiction, we know from Recovery Coast to Coast that addiction is really hard on the addict physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, but it's also hard on the people that they love. And it was very hard on you. You were addicted to caring for her addiction. We had a writer on here a while back, Eli Hastings, who wrote this book called Clearly Now the Rain, and his best friend was a heroin addict, the exact same situation as Mara, that she took on the problems of the world and she couldn't separate herself from that. And he knew she was self-destructive and he still loved her, but he knew it wasn't going to end well. And so how do you still love someone but not sort of insulate yourself from the pain that you know is probably coming? He could do that to a degree because he was just her boyfriend for a while and good friend, but you're the parent and it's harder for you to do that. And I'm sure that when you did it, it was partially self-survival, you know?
It is a family disease. I don't know that I ever was able to divorce myself from her problems. I couldn't. The one time I told you about earlier where I just said, this is your disease, you figure it out, I'll be here. I was standing by, waiting and hoping. But I also walked into her bedroom every morning wondering if she'd be dead or alive. Every morning. And it's a horrible way to live as a parent. And when you become a parent, you know, from day one, your job is to feed, clothe, nurture, love, shelter, protect in every way, shape, or form your child. You wouldn't hesitate a second to throw yourself in front of a Mack truck to save your baby. All the more difficult then to realize how helpless you are. And that is a lesson that's very, very difficult for us as parents. Different than a spouse, different than a parent that's dealing with addiction. As a parent of a child struggling, you're like, why can't I fix this? What can I do? What haven't I thought of? What if I thought about what if I'd moved to Ethiopia with Mara when she was 5 and she could have grown up happy there in a village milking goats or something. You know, we wouldn't be dealing with this. But you know what? I have a feeling we still would, because it was somehow in her nature to experiment, to search, to be full of angst, because no matter where she was raised or how, it was her story. And I know that sounds defeatist and like I'm making excuses, but I really think that if we had lived in Ethiopia or Bolivia or something, she'd be sniffing glue or gasoline out of a pump. She was just that kind of kid. Now, it makes her sound like she's really a destructive person, but she had this need to soften the edges around her. Life was hard for Mara. Yeah. It was hard. So as a parent, how do you fix that?
What did you do during this time for you? Did you go to family programs? Did you learn about the disease? What was happening? I
attended the family week.
At Cottonwood.
At Cottonwood, which was really enlightening. And there were other parents there. And there was also, there were all these exercises and opportunities to sit knee to knee, face to face in chairs with your child, saying, when you do this, I feel this. And you had these really confrontive, not in a negative way, honest dialogues with your child and other parents. And wow, that's so painful to see other people going through the same thing. And yeah, so there was that. I read tons of books. Willpower's not enough. I read her AA book. I'm reading Beautiful Boy now. I'm just, and there's only so much of it I can take at a time because, I can't just completely inundate myself with addiction issues or I won't survive.
Right.
At the same time, a lot of stuff was going on in my life. I was leaving Cairo. I went through a divorce, sold our house, and there were just lots of big, Richter scale kind of events going on around this. What do I do for myself? I do yoga. I pray a lot now. I've really come back to prayer as a way to survive. I rely on the friends around me who are a great family to me. And I have a wonderful sister who's constantly in my life and my angel. So, and my other daughter, I have a lot to live for her.
What have you learned throughout this experience?
How much time do we have? I would learn first and foremost that addiction can happen to anybody, any family, from any socioeconomic strata to anybody. No one's immune.
It's an equal opportunity disease.
Yeah, it is. And that's to be the second part that I have learned. It's a disease that while some people can drink and party and then leave it, there are others who cannot. I've learned never to judge. If I had had two girls like my older daughter, Molly, who's a kind of a superstar kid, I might have been in a position where I thought, lame parents. I wouldn't let that happen. I'd know better. I'd see it. I'd cut it off. I'd do everything. I might judge in a way. I might not have the compassion for people who have kids who are addicted. I wouldn't have the compassion for the addict themselves. I've learned so much about how it comes to own you and how the cravings are horrible. And I have to say, Mara was a fighter. She fought hard for her life. She talked to lots of people. She worked her AA program, got sober, went every day, did a lot of writing. She was determined to try to live. And she said, Mom, every day the addict is outside the AA door doing push-ups waiting for me. I know that. It's frightening. And she goes, I could go out anytime. I go, what do you mean go out? She says, well, that's what we say when we're going to go use again. We go out. And I go, well, what do you mean you could do it anytime? You've gotten a year or something of your sobriety. Why would you do that? See, this is my thinking, right? And she goes, you just do. I said, would there be a trigger, like, a breakup with your boyfriend or something? No, not necessarily. I've learned that some people beat it and some don't. And I often wonder if she'd lived a little bit longer in life, would she have been stronger and older and had time for her brain to heal, and would she have been able to handle it? I don't know.
How did her boyfriend deal with all of this?
He was just destroyed. I don't think he's not going to get over it. He's just not going to.
So much collateral damage from an addict.
Her sister, her father, all the aunts and uncles, her friends, they still post on her Facebook page almost daily. I had a dream about you, Mara. Or, Mara, I remember what you told me. I was getting weak and I thought of you. Or, something, I saw an angel in the clouds and I knew it was you. And it just goes on and on. She was a profound person, really.
What does all that do for you?
It makes me feel good that nobody's forgotten. And, that's why it's good to be here to talk about her, because I know that Mara would say to me, Mom, we addicts are not throwaway people. And one of her friends even had that tattooed on her back. We are not throwaway people. And it says Mara Williams. And it's so true. I know. It's so true. That's my main message, is these are not throwaway people. These are people who just have a struggle that we are trying to understand, that we're trying to learn how to treat, that we're trying to understand its origins. And we know so very little. We're just in the dark ages, really. Just in the dark ages.
Addicts are not bad people trying to be good. They're good people trying to get well. Penny, years later now, you have decided that you're going to honor your daughter, and you've got a project that you're involved with some kids. Tell us about that and how maybe people can get involved or find out more information about it.
We're sort of in our infancy, but it's called the Mara Project. And we took the memorial funds that came in after her passing and thought, what could we do that would be meaningful that she would like? And, Mara loved animals, and she loved the downtrodden. She was always a friend to the person that needed a hand up because she understood what that felt like to be considered one of these throwaway people, as we were just talking about. She went to a school called Middle College High School. There's 4 of them in the city of Seattle. And they're alternative high schools, very small environments, structured for kids to basically get credit retrieval so they can graduate with a diploma. It's not a GED program. It's actual a diploma program through the Seattle schools. Mara clearly did not thrive well in the big high school environment. So she did do well there. She graduated on time, which was miraculous, really. She graduated in June of 2011 at age 18 through this Middle College High School. So we went back to the teacher there who knew Mara and loved her very much and said, what could we do to help the kids here? Because the kids that are typically in middle colleges are kids who have had some hard knocks, and for a variety of reasons. These are kids who could come from abusive homes. These are kids who maybe live on their own with no parents. These are kids who may be working full-time to take care of ill parents. These are kids who might have a kid of their own, immigrants, etc., chemical dependencies. They are together in this small classroom environment, working hard to get through high school, which is noble. I mean, how many kids are just dropping out and just giving up? These kids are not. They want to be there. So we went back to Middle College High School and to Beth Brunton, and I said, Beth, how can we help you? She goes, paid internships. These kids need work experience. They need mentoring. They need to be in a structured environment maybe for the first time in their life.
Great idea.
Told they need to show up on time, being told, if they are going to be late to call.
Accountability.
This is something that a lot of these kids have not been taught.
Yeah.
And so we started an internship program where we pay for internships in nonprofit community service organizations. So these kids come out of themselves working in places like at Northwest Harvest, which is a food bank, working at places like the Chicken Soup Brigade, which helps HIV/AIDS communities, et cetera, et cetera. Some of them go to work at the zoo if they like animals. Some work with children. So we're continuing to sponsor that. In the meantime, though, we're growing in this last year. We've partnered with a new nonprofit called Kids Without Borders. It was started about 15 years ago by a close friend named Sun Michael Pham. He's a Vietnamese immigrant who's a very successful businessman here. He fled when Vietnam and Saigon fell. His dad was a South Vietnamese army general, and he was 18 at the time. Fled with a shirt on his back and has always been grateful to the United States for welcoming him, providing opportunity for him, and he's just a dynamo. He was the only non-family member at Mara's intervention, so he knows Mara quite well.
Wow.
We traveled to Vietnam together, the 3 of us. So back in 2008, before everything started to really come unraveled. So he knows Mara, he's seen her at her worst, and he's seen her at her best. And so we're partnering with his organization now, which works all over the world to empower kids at risk. So we'll be expanding. We're going to do a parent summit with the North Bend community on drugs. We want to tell parents, here's how it can start. Here's what you need to look for. Here's how you need to talk to your kids. Here are resources if you have children who are having a struggle. Because parents are they don't know what to do. They don't have information. It's surprising. And, we want to also spread the word about the 911 Good Samaritan law in our state of Washington, which allows people who are with an addict or anybody who's using that overdoses, you can call the police without repercussions of being prosecuted for illegal use or possession. And the naloxone issue, too, which is the antidote to heroin overdosing. If I had been there when Mara had fallen to the ground with a naloxone injection, I could have saved her life. It's miraculous. It can bring them right back.
Yeah.
And so there are drug dispensaries now that are trying to make that more readily available. Washington State University is one of the schools trying to make that more, their school of pharmacy. So there's all these things starting up. More knowledge about heroin. How are we going to counter it? How are we going to treat it? How are we going to help parents help their kids, et cetera? Prevent it, education, everything.
A number of police forces around the country are arming their police officers with that drug.
Yes, I know. Isn't that fantastic?
It
Yes.
really is.
And even EMTs who haven't had it in their possession are now carrying it. So that's knowledge we all need to have that could save lives. That's what I'm trying to do, is just keep educating, pushing, talking. I do a lot of stuff on this just personally with parents calling me. What do I do? How do I help? I mean, for themselves who have a child who's struggling. So I don't know. Seems to be like my new job.
What do you say to a parent who perhaps is where you were?
I share my experience. And that old Al-Anon thing, you didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it, which is a hard lesson. You're so tempted to run out and save them off the streets. I talk about enabling. And every person has to make their own decision. If a child hits rock bottom and they come knocking on your door for money or shelter, and they're not a minor anymore, what do you do? That's an individual decision that they have to make. I can't make that for them. I point them to resources like SAMA, the Science and Management of Addictions, which is a great organization here.
It is.
And, we just keep talking. And I think knowing that other people have gone through it and feel the same is empowering and supporting. I can't cure their child for them. They know they can't cure their child. And that's the tough thing. You just can't do it for them.
Yeah. Mike?
No matter how much you love them, there's only so much you can do. It was tough on your marriage too, huh?
Yes, it was.
It just seems like that stress, everybody's blaming themselves and what are we going to do? And you forget that, oh, I'm in love with this person, or I have another daughter in Hawaii, or all these other things. Can you talk a little bit about the stress in your relationship and your marriage?
Yeah, it tends to take over your life. When I talk to you about that daily sick feeling in my stomach, that's where all my energy was going. It was to try to save my daughter's life. Try to find the right school to send her to. Try to find the right treatment center. It seemed like it was always something. Help her find a job. Help her get to her job. Help her with her dog. Help, whatever it was. Yeah, my older daughter, I think, was somewhat neglected along the way because of so much. I don't think she ever resented it. She had her own angst and issues with her sister and a frustration and nightmares about her dying constantly. My ex-husband and I think we had a little bit different approaches about what we would do. I think he's a little more liberal approach than me, and so there was a little, difference of opinion about how to sometimes handle things. And yeah, any big issue like that in the middle of a family does take tolls on relationships because it's financially draining. The treatment in Cottonwood was close to $40,000.
Very expensive.
People go, "Oh, you're on TV. You had a lot of money." Well, I was not on TV then. I was just doing freelance work then. We're still paying that off. So yeah, it's financially draining. It's emotionally just distressing as all get out, and you don't sleep well, and you certainly don't feel sexy. I mean, definitely takes a toll.
And I can imagine your older daughter wishing that, wow, how nice it would be to have a relationship with a sister where we're best friends and all that stuff, and we don't have this third entity in our relationship. I could see how that would be hard on your oldest daughter as well.
Yeah. She's very, very, very devastated by the loss of her sister.
Right.
If people wanted to find out more about Mara's project, what would they do?
So nice. They could go to the Kids Without Borders website, kidswithnoborders.org. There's a separate link on that homepage to the Mara Project. We love donations so we can continue to help kids. We're going to, grow this organization. They can like us on Facebook. We have a Mara Project Facebook page.
Nice.
The Mara Project. We'd love you to come on and like us and follow what we're doing. We've just finished interviewing our next round of candidates, and they'll be announced here in the next few days who's going to get internships, and then we'll keep you aware. Maybe we can come back and talk about the Parents Summit and how that goes.
I would love to have that happen. I would love to have that.
It's going to be slated for this fall.
There's so much promise in a Parents Summit. So much promise.
Yeah.
And that's what we need is hope and promise.
We certainly do. And love.
And love, especially love. Penny, thank you so much for coming down and sharing your story about Mara.
Neil, thank you for this opportunity. It's really great to meet both of you. Thanks, Mike.
It's really a pleasure to meet you.
Overdose from heroin, surpassing motor vehicle fatalities as the leading cause of accidental death in the nation. So the whole opioid epidemic is indeed an epidemic. You need to find out more about it. check out the Rolling Stone interview, get online, do some research, get some education, find out about it, and just love one another. I'm Neil Scott, the program Recovery Coast to Coast. Mike, I thank you for coming down tonight and joining us.
Thank you, Neil.
What a powerful story of love, loss, and remembrance. If you know someone, by the way, suffering from addiction, whether it's alcohol or any other drug, please reach out for confidential help and free information. The 24-hour national helpline is 1-800-622-HELP. All calls confidential, and they also have Spanish-speaking individuals who are available as well. We will be right back in 30 seconds with a thought for the day from actress Julie Harris.
Alcohol is running your life. You want help, but can't take time away from work to get it. Where do you turn? Contact Sundown M Ranch. Sundown M Ranch outpatient programs have helped thousands recover from addiction without losing time on the job. Nationally recognized for innovative, effective, and affordable treatment programs, Sundown M Ranch will help you put your life back on track. Go to www.sundown.org to learn more.
Here now is actress Julie Harris with some thoughts on courage.
A great part of courage is the courage of having done the thing before. Ralph Waldo Emerson. One of the realities many of us must deal with in early recovery is our immaturity. Our social, emotional, and even intellectual development often slowed considerably or stopped when we began drinking or using drugs addictively. Some of us missed out on learning the skills that could later enable us to be comfortable and confident in demanding situations, such as job interviews. Others never had the opportunity to learn such basics as dating, making friends, or simply carrying on a conversation with another person. When we begin to recover and face the real world without our medicine, we are confronted with a variety of unfamiliar and often painful emotions and challenges. Even simple tasks are often difficult. Shopping for clothes, ordering food in restaurants, even going through supermarket checkout lines. Just because we temporarily lack certain skills or the experience necessary to develop them, that's no reason to feel ashamed, foolish, or less than. Invariably, we find that we can quickly acquire both the skills and the experience and can soon function in the world without limitation. What is more, as we become comfortable with ourselves and the world around us, we realize that we are not unique and need not face these challenges alone. Thought for today: addiction is progressive, but so is recovery.
That wraps up our podcast. Special thanks to our special guest, Penny Legate, and my co-host for the conversation, my good friend, Mike Hickey. By the way, we'd appreciate it if you could kindly tell one or two of your friends about our podcast. That also helps us to carry the message, especially on social media. And join us next time for America's Voice for Recovery, Recovery Coast to Coast, the national podcast. And another shout out to our sponsoring organization, Sundown M Ranch, successfully treating individuals, including adolescents and their families, for over 54 years. Sundown.org. I'm Neil Scott, reminding you to stay healthy, to live in gratitude, and be kind to one another. Remember, the bright side of addiction is recovery. Pass it on.